千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we delve deeply into the Daodejing by Lao Tzu. So now, let me talk about change. Then we can talk about the cycles of change. They are sort of one and the same topic. In order to do that, I want to make sure everyone understands the original purpose of Tao cultivation. I mean, here we are today. We're all gathering together talking about the Tao. Why do we do this? What is the purpose? The original purpose. Well, let me talk about the original book describing the original purpose of the Tao, of studying the Tao. The original book is not the Daodejing that we're studying today. Those of you who have followed my lectures over the years, you know what I'm about to say. I'm going to say that the original book, the first book about the Tao, is Jing. So I know a lot of people will say Ching or Ching. Actually, it's Jing, and the I and the Ching that you see there, this is just the first attempt to Romanize. Jing is supposed to sound like Jing, but nobody knows that, so it gets mispronounced. So Jing is the book of changes. The first character, Yi, means change. Jing means sutra or classic. So it's the classic about change. Now, let me ask everyone the following question. Why is it important for us to understand change? To the ancients, what was so important to understand about change? I Ching started out as attempts to understand nature. And a big part of that was the understanding of weather patterns. To the hunter-gatherers in primitive times, it was essential to understand weather patterns. They needed to plan hunting and gathering sorties accordingly. They needed to pick the right time to do what they need to do for the tribe to survive. Then, this went on to the study of seasonal patterns. Seasonal patterns, as in the change of seasons, this became increasingly important as hunter-gatherers transitioned into an agricultural context. Farmers needed to understand seasonal patterns, and it turned out that seasons were cyclical, repeating predictable patterns. And the study of these patterns, when we talk about the weather or seasonal patterns, these have to do with patterns in heaven and earth. We look to the heaven to see different weather. We look around at the environment to see the change of season. So it turns out that not just heaven and earth, but the patterns exist everywhere else too, i.e., in human life. So there are 4 things in general that was important to the ancients to understand about change. Number 1, why and how a particular change happens. Both the why and the how are important. And when it comes to weather, you can see, well, when the dark clouds gather overhead, that's a signal that a change is about to occur, as in change of precipitation. Rain is about to come down. So it's important to understand, be able to see the signs to know why and how a particular change occurs. Number two, factors contributing to its cause. When you get from the weather to human affairs, you quickly see that a lot of times it isn't any single contributing factor that caused something to occur, but it can be a confluence of events that is the underlying cause. If so, a lot of these factors may be significant and important, and it's important to know what they are, so the next time there's a similar gathering of conditions causing the change, you can anticipate the change. So there's a number three, the effects it will have. So the change is happening, it's going to have an impact on you, the people around you, the environment. So what is the effect? What is the impact? It's important to understand that as well. Is it positive or negative? Is it temporary? Is it permanent? What kind of effects? And lastly, and the most important one, the patterns that the change follows. So let me pause here for a moment and let me say that people use I Ching to do divination, meaning fortune telling. And a lot of times they marvel how accurate it is. So why is it so accurate? Why does it seem so supernatural and so amazing? I get asked that question a lot. Now, when you see the original purpose for studying the Tao and how the I Ching came about, you can begin to see, to glimpse perhaps, the reason why it is so accurate. It is accurate because it models the repeating, predictable patterns in life. So when it tells you about how things will pan out, you think of it as fortune telling, foretelling the future, divination. From the perspective of the original Tao sages, they're only telling you what the typical pattern is of how things will play out. It's a pattern like the change of seasons that's happened before and will happen again. And the pattern that we talked about just a moment ago, success leading to arrogance, leading to failure, that's one of the patterns described in the I Ching. So because of that, I want to ask everyone to pay attention to how the Tao is really about the transitions, the changes, and how we can understand the transitions and therefore master them. That's the simple one sentence nutshell. That's the Tao in a nutshell right there. And in this chapter, we use the pendulum as a metaphor for the transitions. It goes from bad to good to bad to good to bad to good, etc. It just keeps going. And now that you understand the pendulum metaphor, I think you will also be able to understand the following. Here's the slide that I've kept very simple for emphasis. This is a question for everyone. If you don't understand the pendulum well, let me ask you, what happens when the pendulum turns into a wrecking ball? In other words, when the change in your life occurs, what happens when it wrecks your life? Can something like this happen? Yes, it can. And let me incorporate the feedback and the ideas that I have heard over the years, including from today. Most of the time, when we look at circular motion, people have a tendency to think that it's back and forth, staying at the same place. But in reality, though, it's actually not just circulating forever. There's always a movement in the third dimension which causes the circular motion to become a spiral like a spring. Think of a spring. Whenever you study or master a particular subject, in the course of your study, you're going to learn something, you're going to experiment, and sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, but you learn something from it, and then you attain the next level. You go up higher to the next level, and then you repeat the process all over again. So you circle back and forth. In every level, you go from beginning to expert. And then you go to the next higher level where you are again the beginner, and then after some time, the expert, and then the next level, and then the next level, and so on. That looks like a spring. It looks like spiraling process ever upward. But the opposite can occur. We talk about how the death spiral can occur when something is going bad and not getting better. That's the other direction. It still looks like a spring. But as you're circling, you are literally like water being drained from a bathtub. You are draining down and down and down. It's a spiraling pattern downward. So the circle occurs regardless, but the direction, ascending or descending, that's up to you. So yeah, pendulum is one way to think about it. Spiral will be another. Let's stick with the pendulum for now. I want to get everyone to focus on this idea of how the pendulum can become a wrecking ball. Can it happen? Yeah, let me give you some extreme examples on how it can happen, and then we'll work our way to the ordinary everyday life. So here's how it looks. I'm going to give you some interesting statistics. The first one comes from the National Endowment for Financial Education. According to that organization, it's kind of shocking, but here it is. About 70% of all lottery winners end up broke. This is something that you can look up online. 70%. Wow. A lottery winner, maybe someone who receives this tremendous windfall, millions of dollars. So most of them, it's not even just, barely over half, it's most of them, 70% end up broke. So when someone wins the lottery, that person may be thinking, my fortune has changed. My luck has turned. But if they belong to the 70%, then in comes the wrecking ball. The pendulum, representing a turning of the fortune, is actually the wrecking ball that comes in and smashes everything. So how common is this? Well, it's not just lottery winners. No, it's a pattern that shows up elsewhere as well. Take a look at the following. 60% of NBA players and 78% of NFL players go bankrupt within 5 years after leaving their sport. Is that astonishing? I know that is shocking to me. Today's professional athletes, whether they play basketball for the NBA or football for the NFL, they're all millionaires. As long as they're active, they're earning the big salaries. Everything seems like a bed of roses. But then these athletes have to retire pretty young, much younger than the retirement age of the typical white-collar worker. So while still in their what we consider middle age, they retire, leave their sports, and within 5 years, they go broke. As you look at these statistics, I would like you to keep one thing in mind. These numbers that you see here, 70%, 60%, 78%, these are the people that have filed for bankruptcy. It does not include the people who are doing badly, but have yet to cross the line into declaring bankruptcy. It means among those who get a great windfall in general, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 end up not doing well, years down the road. It's only the 1 or 2 out of 10 that can avoid a similar fate. Folks, this is why it is so important to master the Tao, and therefore master change, and therefore master life. You can just imagine these professional athletes may be ecstatic when they say, hey, I got picked for the draft. My fortune has changed. My luck is turning. Everything's going to be easy from here on out. Well, they don't realize that it's actually a wrecking ball. The same thing can apply to all of us who are not lottery winners or professional athletes. It's all about success and failure at the personal level. It's all about what applies to you and me every day. We all have our little triumphs, little moments of good fortune. We may think, my luck is turning. I've turned the corner, I've hit rock bottom, and now things are just getting better. If we don't master the change, if we don't understand the Tao, it's very likely, it may be 8 or 9 times out of 10 that it turns into a wrecking ball. Hence, here we are, studying the Tao, studying cycles, studying changes and transitions. It's all about the main purpose of why we do what we do, why we gather every Sunday to talk about this stuff. We're studying the cycles, the changes, the transitions, so that it doesn't matter where the pendulum is at, we will know how to handle the swing of the pendulum, still sticking to the pendulum metaphor for now. So when things are good, and if this describes you, please let me know. When things are good, what do we do when we study the Tao? Well, how do we understand it differently than most people? Well, the previous chapter to this one, we're on Daodejing chapter 40 now. The previous chapter was 39. At the very end of it, it's telling us very clearly that when things are good, when you attain a level of achievement, you have to be ever more humble. You have to hold on to the discipline, the practice in the virtue of humility. You have to guard against complacency. When you become complacent, that's the recipe on how your success can suddenly collapse, sometimes overnight. So when things are good, by mastering the Tao, you will know how to handle the good so that the change does not become a wrecking ball. What about the other way? Let me ask everyone, what does the Tao tell us when things are bad, when things are not so great? Yeah, it's good that you tell me to be humble when things are good, but things are not good right now. What do we do then? What does the Tao tell us when things are bad? Well, one of the key points that I mentioned last Sunday was that this chapter, chapter 40, it's close to the very center of the Daodejing. Chapter 41 is the real center, but in chapter 40, it's reflecting on the outer lines of the Daodejing. One of the chapters that it reflects and emphasizes is Daodejing 23. In 23, what is said in metaphorical language was that the strong wind does not last all morning. The sudden rain does not last all day. What it was trying to say was to let all of us know that when things are bad, it doesn't last forever. We know that it's going to pass. We know that it's temporary because, boy, that metaphorical pendulum never stops going back and forth. So it's going to swing around again. And because of that, because we know that it's temporary, that it's going to change, we can remain spiritually strong. We can hold on to hope. I definitely talk to quite a few friends who feel depressed because for them, things are pretty bad right now for a whole host of reasons, for a whole bunch of reasons. Then I have to tell them, number one, and number two, that it ain't gonna last forever. That's number one. Number two, because of number one, you must remain spiritually strong and hold on to hope. Change is coming. Because change is coming, you have to prepare for that. Number three, prepare for the inevitable change. So for someone who may be, for instance, out of work, he may be depressed. He may be losing all hope, contrary to number two. But if because of depression, he then falls into this apathy and doesn't do anything, well, when the change occurs and there's an opportunity presenting itself, he may not be ready to take advantage of it. So what I always say to people in that situation is that this is a wonderful opportunity for you to recharge your batteries, to train yourself to become a more valuable employee so that when opportunity comes, you can capitalize on the opportunity. So prepare for the inevitable change. That's number three. Why do we do that? Because of number four. When the pendulum reverses course, when the bad turns into good, be ready. Be ready to take full advantage when the pendulum is swinging in a positive direction. So there you go, mastering change. That is the reason why we do what we do. So this chapter is talking about something that's very profound, something that we all need to be reminded of every now and then. Why do we study the Tao? This is why. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.